viewers, I'm your host Lipakshi Kurana with another episode of South Asia Focus. And let's begin the show. India has kick-started administering booster doses to its frontline workers and elderly with comorbidities as COVID infection rate spikes multifold in the past 2 weeks. With a target population of around 57 million, experts believe the government should be able to inoculate all of them with what it calls the precaution dose in a few weeks. India is once again registering an overwhelming everyday COVID count like it did in its second wave in April and May, but with a far lower severity, hospitalization and mortality rate. A report.
India has started vaccinating its frontline workers and vulnerable elderly as the Omicron variant has fueled nearly 10-fold rise in daily infections in the past 2 weeks. In this new phase, only healthcare personnel, other frontline workers and people over the age of 60 and suffering from other health conditions are eligible for what the government calls a precaution dose. As per the Federal Health Ministry, an estimated 10.5 million healthcare, 19 million frontline workers and 27.5 million comorbid people in the 60-plus age group would be administered the booster.
ये गवर्नमेंट अभी हमारे लिए बहुत अच्छा काम कर रही है. हम सीनियर सिटीजन हैं. पहले दो डोज भी हमको ऐसे ही मिल गए थे इजीली और अभी भी बूस्टर डोज दे रहे हैं.
While a sudden spike in the infected numbers has caused concerns among many, Omicron, a relatively less threatening variant taking over Delta as the most prevalent variant in the country, has provided a sigh of relief across the health spectrum. And with pharma companies putting their weight behind booster dose, Indian authorities too have urged every vulnerable citizen of the country to get himself jabbed. Meanwhile, India's indigenous vaccine developer Bharat Biotech has claimed that the booster dose of Covaxin is effective against both Delta and Omicron. Despite having one of the largest eligible populations to be jabbed, India has out-vaccinated several of the European countries and the USA. The authorities are now ensuring that the vulnerable receive further immunity in their fight against the pandemic.
All the healthcare workers who are involved in the treatment of the corona patients in the hospital who are prone to get the corona infection, it is advocated to take a booster dose or a precautionary dose after the 9 months after the second dose, and we are starting here today and tomorrow. We will give the booster dose for all the healthcare workers, including the doctors, paramedical staff, nurses, house surgeons, PGs, security and sanitary patients.
Although the situation has not become as grim as the second wave, the Government of India is claiming to be prepared for a further rise that is predicted to peak in mid-February. The Health Ministry, which has cautioned citizens to be more assertive, has also said the country has also reported a low hospitalization, even lesser than half of what is reported during the second wave. A little over 5% of patients since the first case of Omicron was detected have sought hospitalization, compared with 20% to 23% during the Delta-driven last wave. Authorities in the cities of Delhi and Mumbai and major Indian cities say most people have shown no or only minor symptoms and have recovered quickly at home.
वैक्सीन का बहुत ही बढ़िया इफ़ेक्ट हम देख रहे हैं. इतने सारे केस बढ़ने के बावजूद भी एडमिशन बहुत कम है. हमने भी सुना है, आपने भी सुना होगा कि करीबन 1.5% एडमिशन रेट है. बाकी सारे लोग बोलेंगे कि होम आइसोलेशन में हैं, और होम आइसोलेशन से एडमिशन होने का भी अभी कोई इतना इंक्रीज ट्रेंड नहीं दिख रहा है. मतलब सारे लोग घर पे ठीक हो रहे हैं. तो ये एक बहुत बड़ी अच्छी बात है.
Apart from a rapid vaccination drive and boosters for its frontline lot, the government is also taking several measures, including the night and weekend curfews, to reduce the speed of the infection. In order to prevent mass gatherings, the Election Commission of India has prohibited large rallies and has urged the political parties to shift their campaigning for 5 poll-bound states to digital platforms. The union and state governments have so far dismissed the idea of a complete lockdown in order to prevent an economic slowdown that had severely hit the market in 2020 and several thousands were rendered jobless. And the intent of the government has been clearly reflected in its strenuous vaccination drive with relentless information campaigns that have kept the per capita infection ratio of the world's second most populous country way below others, which include even the most developed economies.
And moving on, the other South Asian countries too have stepped up their vaccination drive in order to protect their citizens from new variants and waves. The Himalayan nation Nepal too has started inoculating children. It has also expanded the curbs in order to break the infection chain and flatten the curve. The previous Delta wave in the country has strained the health system of the country, which the authorities are working to prevent a repeat of. A report.
The Himalayan country of Nepal has launched the vaccination drive for its children aged between 12 and 17 amid a spike in the cases of the fast-spreading Omicron variant of the COVID-19. Students queued up outside schools to get their first jab. The decision of vaccinating children of a particular age group was taken after a number of cases were reported from this group. Unlike the early days of the pandemic outbreak, when the children were mildly affected, the new variants have been infecting the adolescents and infants too. School students say they are now less worried after the vaccination.
अब हाम्रो डर चाहिँ धेरै कम भएको छ किनभने अब भ्याक्सिन लगाइसकेपछि हाम्रो रिस्क एकदम कम भयो रिस्क कम भइसकेपछि अब बाटोमा हिँड्दा पनि खासै डर भएन हामीलाई अब त्यसैले धेरै नै कम भएको छ भनौं
Nepal has also banned large public gatherings and closed schools across the Himalayan nation for nearly 3 weeks. Authorities hope the closure of schools will help break chains of infection amid fears about the rapid spread of the Omicron variant of the virus. The Education Ministry, however, said the campaign to vaccinate children aged 12 to 17 at their schools would continue despite closure.
अनि अरु भनेको अब भ्याक्सिन लगाइसकेपछि केही हदसम्म त सुरक्षित हुन्छ भने बच्चाहरुमा आत्मबल बढ्छ भन्ने चाहिँ लाग्छ ताकि अब हामी ठुलोले पनि लिइसकेपछि त हामीले लिइसकेका छौं भ्याक्सिन लिएको जतिले चाहिँ अब कोरोना भइहाले पनि कम्प्लिकेटेड हुँदैन भन्ने खालको मेसेज त यस्तै आइरहेको हो हैन त्यही भएकोले हामीले यस्तै अनुसार उनीहरुलाई पनि जानकारी दिइराछौं
The country is reporting an overwhelming number of cases with daily spike crossing the previous single-day records. The Himalayan nation has also reported over 11,600 fatalities till date. The country has so far provided 2 shots of COVID-19 vaccines to 37% of its population to 30 million since an inoculation drive began a year ago. Nepal's Home Ministry said public gatherings like political rallies and religious functions involving more than 25 people had been prohibited.
सरकारले जुन यो निर्णय गर्न लागेको छ यो कन्ट्रोल गर्नलाई चेन ब्रेक गर्नलाई भनौं है जुन भ्याक्सिन भाइरस ट्रान्समिसनको जुन चेन ब्रेक गर्नलाई भनिएको छ त्यसको लागि चाहिँ गर्न लागेको यो चाहिँ एउटा सिफारिस चाहिँ र एक हिसाबले चाहिँ र संक्रमण दर चाहिँ र कम गर्नलाई राम्रो हो
Last week, the government asked hospitals to prepare for increased numbers of patients as COVID-19 cases could increase sharply. Nepal has so far reported only a few dozen Omicron cases with fatality figures under 10. But Kathmandu say it is not going to take this variant lightly and will take all measures to keep it in check.
And now let's move to Afghanistan. 5 months after sweeping to power, the Taliban is now seeking an active role in distributing the international aid it is likely to receive from different global bodies and the United States in coming months. After the United Nations appeal of over $4 billion aid this week, the Taliban has proposed a joint body in order to coordinate the allocation and distribution of the amount. The Taliban has yet not received the kind of legitimacy it has sought from the international community and has been reaching out to global global powers for the same.
The Taliban, which toppled the Western-backed government in August last year to gain control of Kabul, has proposed a joint body of its officials and international representatives to coordinate the billions of dollars of aid it is expected to receive in coming months. Although it has not been made clear by the United Nations and other foreign governments whether they will be backing such an agreement, as it would provide Taliban the access to large funds, which the international community has been particularly apprehensive about since their takeover of Kabul. The Taliban, however, are confident that they are ready to take charge of the country in all aspects.
این گرد همایی زمین سازی نخستین گفتمان مستقیم میان دستاندرکاران ارشد نهادهای بین المللی و مقامات ارشد امارت اسلامی افغانستان در راستای هماهنگی و دیالوگ روی اولویت‌های اقتصادی و بشری می باشد. همکاری امارت اسلامی افغانستان با سازمان ملل متحد در این شرایط نشان دهنده یک مشارکت بی سابقه میان حکومت و نهادهای کمک رسان می باشد.
Western sanctions aimed at the Taliban also prevented the passage of basic supplies of food and medicine, although this has eased after exemptions were passed by the UN Security Council and Washington in December. United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres, while requesting an integrated support for the people of the war-torn country, also urged the Taliban to refrain from exercising an absolutist administration that has snatched rights of millions of women and young girls.
As I appeal to the international community to step up support for the people of Afghanistan, I make an equally urgent plea to the Taliban leadership to recognize and protect fundamental human rights, and in particular, the rights of women and girls. Across Afghanistan, women and girls are missing from offices and classrooms. A generation of girls is seeing its hopes and dreams shattered. Women scientists, lawyers, and teachers are locked out, wasting skills and talents that will benefit the entire country and indeed the world. No country can thrive while denying
سایر مؤسسات به شمول بانک جهانی در افغانستان هستیم و باور ما به این است که کمک‌های انکشافی کمک‌های بشردوستانه کافی نیست و بدیل بسیار خوب رشد فعالیت اقتصادی و کمک‌های انکشافی است.
The previous Taliban regime of 1996 to 2001 had provided shelter to terrorist groups including Al-Qaeda, and that has been center of concern for international community including the United States, even today. They fear a return of a similar regime would not just internally destabilize the country, but would also pose a major threat to the global peace and security. And the developments that have come at a cost of thousands of human lives and trillions of dollars will reverse to square one.
And now in our section of Asia this week, the stories from across the continent that hit the headlines this week.
When Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station was launched by Tokyo Electric Power Company TEPCO, many options for disposal of stored ALPS-treated water were studied by a special independent subcommittee of experts. Finally, it was concluded that discharge into the sea could be implemented more responsibly. How was this concluded? Professor Hiroshi Tauchi looks back on the careful examinations.
その5つというのが、1つは海洋放出、それからもう1つが水蒸気として放出する、であるいは水素として放出する、それから地層注入、あるいは地層埋設という5つの選択肢を提案をして終わったところでございます。小委員会の場では、特にですね、社会的、経済的な問題を中心にしつつ、この5つの選択肢について、どの選択肢が最も現実的かという議論を行ってきました。実際に実行するまでの時間、あるいは経済的な投資額、あるいは実現の可能性ですね、そういうものを考慮すると、残るのは海洋放出、あるいは水蒸気放出ということになったという経緯があります。こちらについてはですね、リスクの評価を行っております。環境中に放出された時のシミュレーションですけども、広がりや、あるいはそこから想定される人への健康リスクですね。でそれの評価を行った結果として、海洋放出の方が明らかにリスクは低いということがありまして、海洋放出の方が妥当であろうという結論を出した。海洋は一定の流れ、あるいは拡散等が起こっていきますから、そちらの方がリスクが低いだろうというのが小委員会の結論ということになり、海洋放出を第一選択肢として回答したという経緯があるということです。日本の場合はですね、それぞれの原子力発電所等で、目標値というのを定めています。これは総量と濃度の両方で規制をかけているということです。で国際基準は実は濃度しか規制はかけておりませんので、そういう意味ではもともと日本は厳しめの対応をしてきたというふうに私は理解をしております。
Based on careful examination by the government, discharge into the sea will be undertaken in the near future. From now, what is the most important? To confirm the path towards the decommissioning, it is necessary to obtain understanding from related local governments and residents. Mutual understanding with the parties concerned, including those from other countries, is integral. Continuous efforts by TEPCO, Fukushima citizens, the Japanese government, and relevant personnel worldwide are required. Water from Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power station is discharged into the sea after removing harmful nuclear materials through advanced liquid processing system, that is ALPS. But tritium, one of the nuclear materials, still remains in the water. Keiichi Nakagawa, professor of the University of Tokyo, explains how this will be harmless.
トリチウム、水素の同位元素でありまして、ごくわずかな、ベータ線という透過性が非常に低い、放射線を、放出します。トリチウムというのは天然にももともと存在する物質で、したがって我々が普段から飲むお水とか、もっと言うならば我々の体の中にもトリチウムっていうのは存在するわけですね。原発の状況を見ると、アルプス処理をすることで、 簡単に言うならばトリチウム以外の放射性物質は取り除ける。しかし、トリチウム水を取り除くというのは水の中から水を取り出すようなものなんですね。でこれは原理的にできない。そうするとこれを何らかの方法で放出しない限りはタンクの中にトリチウム水が溜まり続けるということになるわけですね。海に流す。これによる影響というのは極めて少ないです。総合的に考えるならば適切な形で海洋放出をするというのがですね、最も合理的な選択ではないかな。
Being expert in radiology, Professor Kechi mentions that the Japanese standard for sea discharge is very safe. The process of decommissioning is undertaken with utmost carefulness and mutual understanding of all stakeholders. Courier services company DHL Express has opened the Middle East's largest robotic sorting center in central Israel as it tries to keep pace with the country's growing economy. Had it not made the $80.38 million investment in the facility near Ben Gurion Airport, the company said it would not have been able to keep up with the pace of orders in Israel. 100 conveyor belts sort 20,000 packages in an hour, roughly 5 times more than before, matching the most advanced centers in Europe. A cargo plane can now be handled in 50 minutes instead of 4 hours. The automated sorting system requires 70% less manpower, so employees have been trained for other roles, DHL said.
And moving on, each time around the dawn of the new year, India's Himachal Pradesh gets ready to welcome the oncoming year with aplomb and festivities. The 5-day-long Manali Winter Carnival that offers the most unique and exciting cultural experiences tops the list. Let's take a look at this year's event that presented the local culture and lifestyle at its best.
Manali, the resort town in Himachal Pradesh, got dipped in colors of joy and festivity as it hosted its annual Winter Carnival. A folk dance Kulvi Nati performed by around 3,000 women was the highlight at the national level Winter Carnival. Dressed in traditional attires, women from around 75 women organizations presented the folk dance, giving the message of women empowerment. Performances by artists from different parts of the state and country were another major draw. Performers from Punjab, Haryana, Jammu and Kashmir and many more states amused the spectators with their dance presentations on new and old film songs. A fashion show in traditional dresses by women remained a center of attraction among the locals and tourists alike.
यहाँ पर विंटर कार्निवल में हमने अपनी प्रस्तुति दे दी है। यहाँ पर डिफरेंट डिस्ट्रिक्ट और अलग अलग स्टेट से भी लोग आए हुए हैं। यहाँ पर मतलब कल्चर एक्सचेंज हो रहा है, तो हमें बहुत अच्छा लग रहा है। मनाली की जनता भी हमें काफ़ी प्यार दे रही है।
The carnival concluded with a beauty pageant where a total of 25 contestants from all over the country participated. Donning beautiful attires, beauties dazzled on the ramp, redefining elegance. In the final round, winners were announced and honored with respective titles.
मुझे विंटर क्वीन 2022 में फर्स्ट रनर अप का टाइटल मिला है, जिसके लिए मैं बहुत ज़्यादा खुश हूँ। और मैं इधर स्टेज के बारे में एंड कंपटीशन के बारे में बोलना चाहूँगी कि इट वाज वेरी टफ। सारे राउंड्स ही बहुत टफ थे, सारे कंटेस्टेंट्स भी बहुत ज़्यादा अच्छे थे, जिसके वजह से कंपटीशन बहुत ज़्यादा टफ हो गया था एज़ कम्पेयर टू लाइक मैं मध्य प्रदेश भोपाल से आई हूँ, इतने दूर से आई हूँ, तो मेरे को बहुत अच्छी अपॉर्चुनिटी मिली है इधर पे। बहुत अच्छा स्टेज था इधर पे और मैं कोशिश करूँगी कि मेरे को और मैं इसके बाद और कॉम्पिटिशन्स करूं और आगे बढ़ूं और अपने आप को सक्सेसफुल बनाऊं।
Regarded as the largest tourism event of Himachal Pradesh, Winter Carnival not just attract tourists to Kullu and Manali during the off-season, but also promote the folk culture and provide a platform to artists.
And with that, we come to the end of this week's episode. See you next week. Goodbye and take care.